Previously, I did a series talking about the overview of the government of the awaited Imam al-Mahdi and what his government will look like and what the times will look like when he reappears from his occultation. I also talked about what his revolution would be like, what the state of affairs would be like, what the soldiers under his command would be like, and today inshallah I'll continue on and I will talk about some of the wars and the battles which will take place upon his reappearance. This will all be based on the hadiths that we have and what you can find in our books which talk about the reappearance of the awaited Imam and what life will be like upon his return. The objective of Imam al-Mahdi is to establish his divine government, a government which has the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rule across the entire world, and for the entire world to be under the rulership of the Imam and thereby under the rulership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Imam comes and he tries to establish this just system, this system of peace, this system of pure Islam, it is natural that he will face objections. It is natural that he will face revolts against him by the very same people who he is trying to get rid of. The people who are tyrants, the people who are oppressors, the people who have existed on this earth from the early days of mankind, who sought to bring injustice and evil into this world. And therefore the Imam will face many obstacles when he reappears. He is going to have to deal with these people and their uprisings against him and all of the mischievous plots which they have in their system. And already today there are people who are awaiting the return of the Imam, not so that they can be of his followers, but so that they can actively work against him. I talked about before, there is an entire department and branch of the American government which solely focuses on studying Imam al-Mahdi and all of his characteristics and all of his beliefs. This is something which Shaheed Muhammad Salih al-Salih has even talked about, and he has brought forward evidences which support this. Therefore, we can't be in a state where we turn a blind eye to the fact that there are already people who are plotting against Imam al-Mahdi. However, when the Imam comes and when he conducts military operations, he is going to be able to remove all of these obstacles, all of these unjust people who stand in his way. And he is going to then overrun one country after the other country to prevail, either in the west or in the east of this world. And eventually he will take over the entire world, and it will be under his command, and it will be under his blessed leadership. Now, since the objective behind the wars at the time of Imam al-Mahdi's reappearance is the destruction of corruption, it is the destruction of tyranny, in preparation for the formation of a divine Islamic government across the entire world, participating in these battles on the side of Imam al-Mahdi brings about a great number of rewards. It brings about a great number of blessings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us by informing us of these rewards through the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Some of the narrations that we have says that if someone who is a fighter in the army of Imam al-Mahdi eliminates one person from the enemy side, he eliminates one of the unjust people who is fighting against the Imam, then the reward for that person would be that of 25 martyrs. The person who eliminates one of the enemies of Imam al-Mahdi has the reward of 25 of the shuhada. However, it says that if someone is fighting in the army of Imam al-Mahdi, then he dies and he attains the position of martyrdom, he becomes a shaheed in the army of Imam al-Mahdi, then he will only have the reward of 2 martyrs. So we understand that if you are in the army of Imam al-Mahdi and you eliminate one of his opponents, you gain the status of 25 martyrs. However, if you yourself become a martyr, you only gain the reward of 2 martyrs. Meaning what? It is more of a blessing for you to take out one of the Imam's enemies than for you yourself to gain martyrdom. Similarly, the people who become disabled and the people who are wounded, whether it be by swords, whether it be by bullets or bombs, whilst they are in the Imam's army, will have a special value in the government of the Imam. He will pay special attention to them. He will visit them. He will make sure that their families and themselves are taken care of, whether that be by money or whether it be by goods which will help them in their everyday lives. And when Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam was addressing, and when he was talking to the Shia who were gathered around him, he said that, meaning the people who are in the army of Imam Mahdi, if you would be as what we have asked you to be, if you have followed all of the orders which we have told our Shia to do, and you would not go against anything which we have asked you to do, if this person is in such a condition and you would die prior to Imam al-Mahdi returning, then he will be classed as a martyr. And if he perceives the Imam and he achieves martyrdom whilst he is fighting in his army, then he will have the reward of 2 martyrs. And if he slays one of the enemies of Imam al-Mahdi, then he will have the reward of 20 martyrs. And some of the narrations say that instead of 20, it is of 25 martyrs. Therefore, there is a status. If someone is in the service of the Imam, and they are obedient Muslim, and they are one of the Shi'as of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and they are loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their worship, and they die prior to Imam al-Mahdi coming, then they die shaheed. If someone is in the army of Imam al-Mahdi, and he gets slain, he has the blessings of 2 shuhada. And if he takes out one of the enemies of the Imams, he has the reward of 20 or 25 of the shuhada. And what this hadith shows, what I've been trying to emphasize, is that the value of taking out one of the opponents of Imam al-Mahdi has a much greater reward than of becoming a martyr and the concept of becoming shaheed itself. There is more value in defending the Imam by physically removing his opponents and enemies than by becoming a shaheed yourself. Therefore, anyone who wants to be in the army of Imam al-Mahdi and wants to be on the war front, who wants to be on the battlefield, who wants to physically give with all of his blood and his life for the sake and service of the Imam, must realize that although attaining martyrdom and becoming a shaheed is one of the true goals, something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Holy Quran, that they will be looked after and that they will not be dead, they will be in the company of Allah. Although this is such a high status, being one of the people who physically defends the Imam is 25 times greater than this. Regarding the way in which Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman would behave with the families of the martyrs, the families of people who are slain in the battlefield, Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about it. He says that after all of the military operations, Al-Qa'im will go to Kufa and he will stay there. And there will be no martyr who lives on this earth who has been slain in the way of Imam al-Mahdi, whose debts will not be paid by the Imam. And the Imam himself will give stipends and he will give remuneration, he will give money to the families of these martyrs and he will make sure that they are taken care of. The hadith, the sermon where Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam talks about the families of the martyrs who die fighting for Imam al-Mahdi shows that the Imam himself will pay great attention and he will pay a great deal of care to those families. He won't leave them to reside in poverty as some people in this world today have done. And it shows that there is a blessing in those who attempt to fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who are slain. And it also shows a lot about the type of people who go and take care of the martyrs. This is one of our duties then, in order to try and be a follower, to try and live up to the expectations of our role model Imam al-Mahdi, to go and pay our respects to the shuhada, and to go and to support the families of those shuhada as well. And blessed are the people, especially in our lands, who go and honor the shuhada, whether that be in Iraq, whether that be in Iran, from wherever. Those people are the true followers of Imam al-Mahdi, because they have realized that to be one of Imam al-Mahdi's followers, they need to carry out the same type of actions which the Imam will carry out. Now, the type of weapons which people have spoken about, when Imam al-Mahdi comes, are they really going to be fighting with swords? Of course, in history, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Imam Ali, whenever they were in battle, they would fight with swords. Is it really going to be the case that when Imam Mahdi comes, he's going to walk about the battlefield with a sword, whereas everyone else has assault rifles and they have rocket launchers and nuclear bombs? From the hadith we have, that Ahlul Bayt ﷺ say that there's going to be new types of weapons. Weapons which this world has never seen before. And these are going to be used on the front lines when Imam al-Mahdi is fighting his wars. Although some of these narrations talk about the word sayf, they talk about the sword. Some of them also mention weapons which can turn buildings into dust. And you can see this today. How would the Imams know about concepts such as perhaps nuclear weapons? I spoke about it before, but there's hadiths that talk and that they mention that human beings will be left into nothing but dust after these weapons are used. And there's also hadiths which talk about the way Imam al-Mahdi will fight and the weapons he will use when he is in war. And it talks about the weapons being so powerful that they will make the walls of different cities crumble upon touching them. And it will turn a city into a pulverized mess of stone and rubble. It talks about the fact that even with one single blow, the enemy and the enemy fighters will melt into salt or heated lead. If you understand the way in which chemicals burn, you'll see that they will turn into almost nothing, dust. And based on one of the narrations, the weapons of the soldiers of Imam al-Mahdi are made of iron. So they are made of metal, but they are such in a way that if they were to strike a mountain, then that entire mountain would collapse and fall in between itself. Some people then say that when the Imam comes, people will use weapons which utilize the concept of fire against him, whether that be bombs, whether that be explosives, whether that be nuclear weapons. And some people say this is a bit ridiculous. How are people going to try and fight the Imam with fire? Are they really going to try and fight Imam al-Mahdi with fire? One of the hadiths we have says that when Imam al-Mahdi comes, he's going to wear a special garment, he's going to wear special clothing. And this clothing is going to prevent him from damage and prevent him from harm against heat, against fire. And it said that this is the same garment, the same piece of clothing that the angel Jibreel brought to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam for him so that he wouldn't die, he wouldn't burn in the fire of Namrud. And this piece of clothing that Nabi Ibrahim wore is also going to be worn by Imam al-Mahdi. And if it were not the case that there was going to be these advanced weapons that were at the hands and the disposal of the enemy, then maybe there wouldn't be a need for the Imam to even wear this garment. So we need to think rationally. There is a reason why our Imams have told us that Imam al-Mahdi will wear such a piece of clothing to protect him from something. And we need to join the dots. Why is he going to wear this? He's going to wear it for a reason, and it's because those who fight against him are going to use these new weaponry against him. It's also possible that the fact that this is something which the angel Jibreel gave to Nabi Ibrahim is a miraculous occasion, that this will also be given to Imam al-Mahdi. And in this regard, we have a narration from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he says that if the supporters of Imam al-Mahdi encountered an army which stretched from the entire east of the world all the way to the western world, then they would be able to crush them in just a moment, and that the weapons of those enemies would never have any effect on them. So there is something miraculous in this. It is not going to be normal wars. It is not going to be a normal battlefield. It will be like something we have never seen before. I'm going to share a story because we talk about Imam al-Mahdi a lot, but we neglect the way in which we can try and get closer to him. We neglect the way in which we realize the ways in which he can visit us and the way in which we can truly meet him and connect with him. This story was about Marhum Ayatollah Muhammad Sistani, and he says that his father, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Sistani, who is also the father of Sayyid Ali Sistani, at the time he was one of the big ulama in Mashhad. He was one of the big scholars, and he had a lot of influence, and people respected him for his knowledge and his wisdom. And Sayyid Muhammad Baqir Sistani made a pledge one day that he's going to recite Ziyarat Ashura every single day for 40 weeks. And he makes this pledge because he wants to finally be able to meet Imam al-Mahdi in this life before he dies. And he says that each week I go and recite Ziyarat Ashura, I'm going to do it in a different mosque. so that I can go and help the people benefit from the ziyarah as well. Now, he says that in the last week, the 40th week, when he's reading Ziyarat Ashura in Mashhad, in one of the mosques, he's finishing the ziyarah and he leaves. And once he's at the doorway putting his shoes on, he sees a light from a house which is nearby the masjid. And he's never seen a light like this before. It's not a normal light like this. He says it's something which I could not even begin to describe to anyone. So he begins to put his shoes on. He rushes over to this house to see what this beautiful light is. He wants to know what's going on. And when he arrives at the house, he starts noticing that there is people gathered outside, and they are crying, and they are wailing, and they are grieving. And he realized that someone had passed away who resided in this house, and that these people were mourning the death of this person. So he begins to pass on his condolences to them. He says, I'm sorry for your loss. May Allah grant them paradise. May Allah grant them the chance to meet their Lord, etc. But although he is speaking to these people, he is still concerned. I saw a beautiful light come from this house. I want to go and investigate it. I want to know what this light is. So he goes inside. And when he enters in, he notices in the middle of the room, there is a body covered in the white shroud, lying on a table. And he noticed it's clear that this person has only recently died. The body hasn't been buried yet. They've just prepared it to be put into the ground, and they have just recently passed away. He looks at the body, and then he's drawn over to the side of the room, one of the chairs. And what he sees is a person who is sitting there. But this person hasn't resembled what a normal person looks like. This is not a standard person sitting in this chair over there. He explains, I have never seen a person look like this in my life. I have never seen such light radiate from a person's face before. And he begins to quickly realize that this person sitting beside the dead body is Imam al-Mahdi. Sayyid Muhammad Sistani was the only person in this room at the time who noticed that this person sitting there is Imam al-Mahdi. Everyone else just seems to be walking by, paying no attention to this person sitting there. So he goes over to him and he greets him in the most humble way he can imagine. And he goes and he sits beside him. And the Imam greets him back with such kindness that he says he has never received before. Bearing in mind, when he is describing this encounter, he cannot physically explain what it is like to be meeting this person, or what this person looks like, or the feeling that he has in his heart when he is around this person. Imam al-Mahdi then begins to start talking to him very quietly, whispering in his ear. And he says something amazing to him. He says, it's not necessary for you to make these pledges and for you to make these promises to yourself in order to meet me. Remember, Sayyid Sistani says at the beginning that he wants to do Ziyarat Ashura in order to meet Imam al-Mahdi. Imam al-Mahdi says, you don't need to do this. You don't need to make these promises in order to meet me. He says, if you are a true mu'min, if you are a true believer, like this deceased lady who is lying on this table, then we will always come to visit you. We will always be in the same presence as you. The Imam then begins to explain who this lady is and why he is in her presence. Why is Imam al-Mahdi in the funeral of this lady? He begins to explain that during this lady's lifetime, while she is alive, bearing in mind, this is in the city of Mashhad. When she was alive at the time of the Shah of Iran. And at that time, he had put the ban on the hijab. A woman was not allowed to go out into the street wearing the abaya, wearing the chador, wearing the hijab. There's a ban. He says this lady did not leave her house for 7 years. She did not wander outside of her house to preserve her hijab for 7 years. She didn't leave that house so that she could honor and maintain the memory of Fatima al-Zahra, and to protect her head and to protect her hijab and her modesty. And now that she has passed away, Imam al-Mahdi comes to visit her. Imam al-Mahdi comes at the time when her soul is ascending to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he sits in her presence and he comforts her soul. And he says to Sayyid Sistani, this is what we will do if you truly show that you are one of our followers, if you truly live up to the commands which we ask of you, if you truly adhere to the Islam which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed on us. And this is what we need to try and be like this woman who was lying dead in that room. We need to be the ones who are ready to give up and sacrifice everything in our lives in order to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like the way, for example, Imam Hussein did, the best example. Not just his life did he sacrifice, his entire family's lives as well. He knew that they would die. He knew that he would be slain. Yet he did it anyway. Why? For the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the sake of preserving Islam. And as always, we try and say that we are the role models of these people. We look at them as our role models and we are their adherents. And we try and be like them. And we need to be like this in every aspect of our lives. And once we do this, inshallah, we are given the blessing of Imam al-Mahdi coming to our funerals. When our souls leave our bodies to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam al-Mahdi will be sitting watching. And he will intercede to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he will say, this is one of the true believers. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us amongst the true believers with the shuhada and with the prophets and with the imams and the Ahlul Bayt, and to pray for the return of the awaited Imam al-Mahdi. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.